So welcome everybody. Welcome to the Autodesk webinar, How to Populate 3D Worlds with Golaem, a plugin for Maya. So for the next hour, this is your time to learn, connect, ask questions. Like I said before, please feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Today we have Nicolas Chaverou with us today. He's originally co-founded Golaem and is now Golaem Product Manager at Autodesk. In this webinar, he's going to share how you can use Golaem to create multiple animated characters from a few to thousands for your scenes. So great. So I'll hand over the floor to Nicola and dive into everything Golaem.
Excellent. Good morning or afternoon, evening, everybody. And thanks for the intro, Lucas. And also, yeah, give me some movie recommendation in the chat box because I need to watch a movie and I don't have any idea for tonight. So yep, was part of the Golaem team and now PM for Golaem. And just before we jump into Maya and I show you, how the workflow looks like for Golaem, just a couple of slides if you never heard about this. We are, so when we started that product, that was in 2011. So we've been working on this for all those years. And here you can get a sense of the various projects it's been used. So from animation project to TV shows to low hand, high hand, really our motivation when we get started with this was to make crowd available for the majority of studios. If you are like a two-man band studio in a garage, or if you are like a high-end studio doing really expensive movies, we wanted the software to be versatile enough for you to dive into this. So this is why we started at a plugin for Maya, and this is still what it is right now. Just also, a couple of customers which have been using Golaem this past years too. And of course, a really quick reel is just a couple of seconds, just to give you a sense of what we're speaking when we're speaking about crowds. It's not anymore characters in the far background in the depth of field and blurred. Now crowds tend to be really close to camera, almost interact with shot live action characters. And for sure, they're mostly moving people, but you can think it about just a way to handle a lot of data, a lot of characters in general manner. Those characters can be humans, they can be cars, they can be animals, anything which basically has to interact and move around. This is like a good example of a car like that was rodeo shot on John Wick, and all the cars were being controlled by Golaem. And of course, it has physics and plenty of various stuff. So here we go. Let's jump into Maya and see how it actually looks like if you were about to use it for your own usage. So as I said, it's a plugin for Maya, so it means that you can import your own character and your own motions as soon as they can be imported into Maya. And here, let's assume that I already converted my character, and let's assume that I want to populate that environment. By the way, you can tell I'm not an artist. This is me modeling here. But let's assume this is an environment that I want to put hundreds of characters, like moving around, avoiding each other, avoiding those cubes here, which are going to be obstacles, playing nicely with each other, being realistic, and all of this within the next 20-ish minutes. So yeah, let me give you a sense of how easy it is and how versatile it is, which is what I claimed when we started that session. So here, I'm going to start by computing a terrain because there's indeed those obstacles there that I want to take into account. There's a slope here. There are some limits of the environment. So I want my characters to know about that. So my first step will be to compute something we call the navigation mesh. So I've got the Golaem shelf here opened, and all the buttons that you have here are usually going to be used in the order of making your shots. You've got data preparation here, characters import, behavior tools, export, lighting, shading, rendering. So the whole workflow is presented through that shelf. And I won't have to dive into the menu. I will just stick to the shelf here. So I want to compute the navigation mesh, which is a representation of my terrain, which knows about the available zones and the obstacles. It's going to ask me for a couple of parameters once the geometry has been selected, such as what's the maximum step 8. Let's say that the character will have are going to be huge creatures, really high. Maybe this is just something they're going to step on, and I don't want to discriminate that cube. But if my characters are rather small, of course, I want this to be taken into account and I want them to go around. I'm going to also give the distance between two walls to consider that if I can go through that corridor or not, a clearance under ceiling, and slope. You can see that this is in meter units, but we have way to control what kind of unit we want to use here. Here, we're just going to consider that 1 in Maya, a cube which is 1, 1, 1, so a grid is going to be 1 meter. But of course, depending on the way your studio work or yourself work, you can change this. So I'm going to stick with that default value there. And just as to compute the terrain, you can see that it processed for a couple of seconds, and at the end, it shows you those green lines, which are the obstacles of the terrain, which will be known by the characters. And we can have as many terrain as we want to. We can assign terrains to various characters. If we got flying birds, of course, they will have a different representation of the environment. If we've got cars, we'll have another representation. And humans will use, or characters moving into that area will have that representation. So the terrain node appears now. It's a new node in your scene, which is just there, and it will be connected to other characters as soon as you start populating. Then let me decide what kind of characters I want to bring into that scene. So as I said, I already converted some Maya characters beforehand, and I'll give you a quick glimpse of how you convert a character. But here I already predefined a casual man character. So let me import it so we can get a sense of how it looks like. So let me get the preset. Oops. And here it is. So my character is there. He's really low def character, is just a quick modelization that we did with a couple of props stacked on it. But keep in mind that, of course, you can bring your own characters. You've seen, you know, Teenage Mutant animated, they have their own type of characters. You've seen John Wick, they have their own type of characters in motion. So you can, of course, bring your own. Here's just some preset that I'm showing. So that character here has some bones, some geometry being skinned on top of it. It has different props stacked on it. There's a short pants, a long pants. So you can tell that from the end, it has a flag, of course. So you can tell that from that character, I can probably make a couple of variations. So let me show you how we predefine this. I can jump into the preset I just loaded into my scene. And I can extend the file. So a Golaem character, whenever you need to bring your own character, a Golaem character will look like this. We'll first have a representation of the skeleton, which is here you can see it's a nodal system. It allows us to be able to take into account any type of character. It can be a spider, it can be a car, it can be a spaceship, it can be a human. It's just a matter of connecting the nodes. And then we have, so this is for the skeleton, and then we've got some geometry representation there. So we're going to tell here, for example, that character has an undercoat group. And in the undercoat group, there's either a t-shirt geometry. So t-shirt is composed of t-shirt mesh and the body, and a sweatshirt. And you can see that there's some weights there, which tells that we're going to make a variation for that character. Some characters will wear a sweatshirt, some characters will wear a t-shirt, and you'll be able to control that weighting if you want to. So you do this for the coats, for the pants, probably for the flags to say either you got the flags or either you got nothing. And you're going to handle and create all your variations into that left panel. So for example, here, I've defined that there's going to be one variation, which will have some sweatshirts, some t-shirts, so you can specify, override the weighting system here, some long pants, some short pants, but no flag. And I created another version here, which has different weighting, but here flags. So I'll make sure that if I assign that type to my characters later, they will follow those rules and I'll have control. Those are rules that you provide to everybody, but of course, you'll be able to override any single character later if you want to. So this is how the character is defined. So here it's been defined. That's so great. Now we can move into spawning characters around. So let's move into the shelf and go into the population tool. The population tool will allow me to draw some zones or connect to Maya geometry to connect with zones. So I can, for example, draw a box. And within that box, I have sub positions that I can increase numbers of. Those positions will know about the terrain. So we always make sure that we're not going to generate characters in zones which are not available. And I'll be able to, of course, control the distance. Here you can see it kinds of make a grid pattern. I can just add some noise. That noise can be also added to the orientation, or to the, I can provide an overall orientation for everybody. And once again, this can be controlled with painting tools if you want to, with Maya, geometry, whatever you need. But those positions and orientation tells you that there's going to be a character here in those various positions at those various orientations. So when I'm happy with that tool, let's place it slightly here and there. When I'm happy with that tool, I can just press create. And now the next time I'm going to run the sim, I'll have all my characters popping at the right position and orientations. They're also following the rules that I've been providing them with. So let's say here they're all wearing t-shirts. So let's say I would like to bring some sweatshirts back. Let's pump the sweatshirt slider. Let's save the file. And the next time I'm going to throw the sim. Now you can see that with the same position and orientation, I've got my characters changing their assets repetition. So a quick word about what's going on here. You may notice that I have almost 400 characters in the viewport, and that's still really interactive. And also you looked at the outliner, you notice that there's no, I haven't added 400 nodes. So there's just one node handling all those characters. And the way that they are drawn is using some GPU display. So we are taking advantage of your graphics card to display all those characters into the viewport. And what it actually is doing is it's making all the skinning, all the geometry variation onto the GPU and displaying this. So it also means that if for some reasons you want to render that frame, so here I'm using Arnold. Yeah. Let's press render. As this is not real Maya geometry, you won't have anything into your scene yet. So if we want Arnold to know more about that crowd, we'll have to go through an extra step, but this is not real Maya geometry. This is just some display that we're providing you with. But it's a good way, to get a sense of what's going on in your scene and debug and iterate until you figure like everything is correct. Okay, let's spawn those characters here. Let's just stick it there, and let's start making them move. Of course, I could create other zones. I could import other characters, let's say a woman character or maybe a canine dog character, and have all those people interact with each other. But I'll just stick with the male character for now. Let's assign them with behavior. So let's move with the shelf, and let's open the behavior editor. So as a crowd TD or as a crowd artist or as making a crowd chat, this is probably the tool you're going to spend the most of your time. That tool defines what the characters are going to do for the duration of the simulation. So the way you read this is on the right side, you've got your outliners regarding crowds. So it tells you how many types of people you have in your scene. So right now I just have my men character type, but if I had a car, a dog, a female, I'll have a list of all of those. And if you open any of those here, it will show you the simulation graph. So what the characters will do during the whole duration of the simulation. So right now it's empty. And if I play that frame for that simulation for a couple of frames, you'll see that nothing's happening there, which is expected. Then you got your outliners regarding what's going on in terms of behaviors, in terms of motion clips. I don't have any clips yet. And in terms of triggers, we'll speak about triggers later. Great. You got that space. I spoke about this one. And here on the left, you got your library of the various behaviors and triggers that you'll be able to drag and drop. So this is probably where we mostly differ from other crowd systems. We figured that crowd doesn't have to be hard to do. And they kind of always revolve on the same scenario. You want to make a battle scene, you want to make a stadium, you want to make a traffic and pedestrian scene. You may want to do a herd of animals, herding around, or fishes flying around, or that kind of stuff. So we figured, okay, what if we provide higher level behaviors, which kind of allow you to quickly achieve those and provide enough parameters for you to change and create variations on the fly easily. So those behaviors, they are just actions that you can just, drag and drop here and assign to your flow. So for example, there's an action which says go somewhere. Go somewhere means that we'll be able to analyze the terrain. We can provide some rules about where you should go, like follow a curve, follow a locator, follow a mesh, whatever you want to. And the system will just compute a path for itself and follow that path. So Here, my go-to behavior, it's a Maya node, so it has an attribute editor with some attributes there that I can play with. I can either reach or flee. I can decide what kind of target I want. So by default, it's a random target. And we know about, the terrain and the obstacles, so we can quickly sample the terrain here and just put random positions. So I'm going to stick with this for now. I'd like also my characters to avoid each other. And the way humans tend to avoid is really specific. It depends on the density, but like humans tend to approximate and extrapolate their trajectories based on the others. So we've been implementing this. It's from research papers. So we've been putting this into a behavior that, once again, you just have to drag and drop. And if I put those two behaviors on the same spot, now I've got going somewhere and avoiding the others and avoiding the obstacles. The avoidance behavior also specify what's the speed of my character, what's the acceleration, how bold or aggressive the characters are. And just by setting those two behaviors there and launching the simulation, now we'll have all the characters picking a random target. So maybe random is not interesting. We'll change this later, but just for the sake of the demo right now, let them go around. They avoid each other. They avoid the block, which is here, the different obstacles. And when they reach the target, they just stop. We may notice here and there's some characters stopping. So let's say I'm not happy with this. I don't want them to stop. I want them to go infinitely. So maybe the first thing I can do is try to bring some of the operators that we have here. So for example, there's an operator, which is the loop operator. And here it's saying when a behavior is done, please restart it. And if we restart a behavior which is going somewhere random, it just means that we're going to pick another target again and again and again. And here for the whole duration of the 3000 frame, if I launch that sim now with the loop operator, you'll notice that nobody will never stop. Okay, as I said, not really interesting. The random, maybe most of the time I want to control wherever they are, so I can create a target node. So this is here, my target, there. And my target can have sub positions with different distance in it. Great, and I can say, now I want my characters to reach that position there. So to do so, I'll just change my go-to behavior and say, instead of going random, I want to use a target mode. And the target I want to use is going to be that guy there. And now you'll have all the character gathering, taking the shortest path to go to their position. Okay, oops. And for some reasons, I kind of populated that scene. There you go. Okay. So now all the characters are gathering. What about, I want half of them to go anywhere, random, and I want half of them to go to the target. So let's do something more complicated. Let's group that go-to behavior first to hide the complexity, and let's resume this back to going random with the loop around, and let's bring another behavior, the go-to behavior, and say, okay, I want that one to reach the target I just specified. So now we've got two choices, going randomly or going to the target. And we want to control how we make that choice. So we've got different nodes to do this, but one node, which is super easy to use, will be the random node. So the random node allows me to connect as many outputs as I want to. And on the random nodes, I'll have the control of what's the weight to pick one arrow or the other. Here, it's going to be 1 and 1, which means half of them will go random, half of them will go following the targets. And once again, next time I throw the sum, I can check how it's going on. And if I want to get good information about what's going on, I can click on a character at any time. Let's say that guy here. And I can see what he's doing. So I can see what he's seeing first. I can see the other entities he's perceiving for his navigation. The obstacles, if there are any. We can see that guy, for example, see that corner which is here and it's going to avoid it. And we can also see which behavior he's playing. And we can also see that info here into directly into the editor. We can see that block is green, which means that he's been picking that direction there. So this is why it's going to the target that we've been specifying. If I picked another character, let's say that guy, for example, there's a huge chance that he's running that other behavior. So at any time, you can monitor what's going on here and debug your scene, figure what you've been doing wrong on why a character has been making a decision that you're not understanding. You can just jump into all those tools and figure it out by yourself and fix it. Great. So excellent. I like it pretty much, but what about animation? Those guys, they are just standing still, right? They're in T-pose. And well, the big challenge here is that they are of different sizes. Some characters are rather small, some characters are rather big. They have different speeds because they need to avoid each other. They need to turn sometimes. The terrain is slightly irregular in some positions. So how do we make sure that, you know, we can apply the right motion to the right character without having all those casual artifacts such as sliding feet, weird motion transitions, and of course, we don't want to animate those 400 characters manually. So how do we bring them with animation? Once again, we provide a behavior for this, which is the locomotion behavior. So I'm just going to stack that behavior with the rest. And now I'm saying I want my characters to go somewhere, avoid each other, and also play a nice animation. So the idea behind the locomotion is we're going to build something called a motion tree. So if you're not familiar, this is fine. I'll just define that later. And in that motion tree, you're going to ask which motions you want your characters to be able to do. So here, this is some motion. We've been doing some mocap sessions, and we ended up with a couple of cycles. Once again, you can provide your own motions if you want to, of course, you know, depending on the style of the show, if you're doing animation, if you're doing 2 steps, animation on steps and that kind of things, you have to provide your own animation for this. But we also provide some clips if you want to take advantage of those. Let's walk through the various clips we have here. We've got different walks, slow, normal, and fast. We've got a stand animation, we're gonna run animation, and we got a couple of turns, turning right, at 45 degree, 90 degree. So we kind of basically saying what kind of actions the characters are able to do. And what I'll do is I just take them all and load them into the system. We just have right turn animation. So we're going to ask to create the left turn versions of it. And just let the system do it by itself. So the idea is every time we're going to start the simulation, let's close this for a second. We're going to analyze all those motions. We're going to check how fast they go and how much they turn. And we're going to build the motion tree because the navigation is going to say, I want that characters to move at, I don't know, 1.15 meters per second and turn slightly on the left. So we're going to look at all the motions that we have. What are the most relevant animations to achieve this? And you got all the characters now blending those motions together. So let's get a sense of what that character here is doing, for example. So if we make a close-up, we can notice that every single character posture is different from each other. That guy is right leg in front. This one is left leg in front. And, you know, all of them are slightly different, even if they are relying on the same motion. So as I said, we are extracting how fast it goes, how much it turns. We put this into a 2D space, and that kind of creates that weird triangle here. If I was, for some reason, removing the motion, let's say I go into the locomotion here, and I decide to disable the run animation, look at the shape here. I'm going to start that simulation again. You can see that that shape now is different because it takes into account the motions which are loaded. Okay, let's resume and put the motion back. Great. So what it will do is the red dot is the navigation system. So it says that for that character to reach its target and to avoid the other characters, we need to go at 1.37 meters per second. And we need to turn at 26 degrees on the right. Of course, we don't have that exact animation, but that red dot ends up into a triangle, and that triangle is made of 3 motions with different speeds. And now we're saying, okay, we need to blend the run with a turn left animation with a walk fast animation. We're going to blend them together with some specific weights, and it's going to create that animation that we need specifically. And if we run, you'll notice that that red dot is kind of moving into that 2D space there. And we are blending at every frame or so a different setup of motions. And if we pause here, you'll notice that that character is blending a different set, that character is blending a different set because he needs to do different things. He needs to achieve, reach another target, he needs to avoid characters in a different way, and so on and so forth. So this is really convenient, in just a couple of clicks, you can already decide and have your characters animated in a realistic manner without sliding feet, and we'll still have ground adaptation in the meantime, and so on and so forth. Great. What if I would like to make a transition to a specific motion at some point? I want to have control, and maybe I want, as soon as my character enter like a plane, let's put a plane maybe there, and I would like every single character who enters that zone here to trigger a different motion. Maybe, they want to flee for something, or you want to react to them being hit by an arrow. So at some point you want to trigger some motions there or some behaviors. So the first thing I'll do is I bring another motion clip here, put it in parallel with the rest. And I'm going to load once again a clip that we have been motion capturing. This one here. Let's say, let me show you. Okay, so yeah, this is a motion with standing feet, but raising arms. So the first thing I want to say is, because if I just launch that motion right away, I'll have a really weird zombie motion. So what's going on here is we're blending the locomotion with the rising arm animation. And one is feet planted in the ground and one is feet moving. So there's kind of a conflict on those two motions. They try to blend with, with the same weight. So this is not what we want. We want to say that motion here, I just want to apply it on the upper part of the body. So each behavior can have control on a specific part of the body of the character, and you can decide so. So I don't want to control the pelvis. I just want to control the left arm and the right arm. Okay. So now the legs should not be influenced anymore, but you can still see that those arms, they're not completely raised. That's because the locomotion is bringing them down and the raising arm is trying to bring them up. So they're right in the middle here. So I want to say that that motion has more control. So we've got some blending weight attributes. And now I can say, yeah, you are taking full control of that posture, even if another motion is playing. And they are in sync. So we can change maybe the start frame. So they're not starting all at the same time. Great. So now they're slightly out of sync. And we can also decide how fast it goes. We can change the speed ratio here to just make a variation of speed. And here we go. And as I said, I want that motion to only play when I'm in the zone. So I'm going to control something we called the triggers. You may have noticed that on each block here, and that'll be true for the loop as well, there's that small arrow. So that small arrow is a condition. We call this a trigger, and it defines when does that behavior start and when does it stop. So if I click on this, that opens the lower panel there, which is called the trigger editor, and you can see it just has a really easy trigger which says true. So should that behavior start? The answer is yes, always. And now we've got a library of triggers here that we can just take advantage of. So I want to trigger when I'm in the zone. Good enough for me. There's a zone trigger that can just drag and enable. And that zone trigger takes a couple of meshes into parameters. So I can select my zone here. I can select my trigger there and connect those two together. And now, as soon as I throw the sum, I'll have my characters hanging around. And as soon as they enter the zone, they blend in that motion here. They blend in exactly at the moment that they step in the zone. So if I want to make it more organic, because, when you're in a crowd, not everybody is reacting. It's really sharp all the time. So I can maybe add a fade just to add a slight delay. And I can draw a curved delay here. So I can say, okay, not everybody will raise its hand like right when they enter the zone, but at some point they all will do. And yeah, now it's slightly delayed. Even if the characters enter the zone at the same time, you'll see that it's just slightly delayed. And I haven't said anything about the way it stops. So right now it's not stopping. All the behaviors by default, they're not stopping. But if I wanted to change this, it's just a matter of, jumping into the stop trigger and changing that default value. Okay. Of course, I mean, there are tons of behaviors here. You can see some cars there, some birds flocking, some clothes, some fur. I mean, we've got tons of them. We've got tons of operators, tons of trigger, and like an hour is not enough to cover all of these. So I'm going to stop here because I want to show you the rest of the workflow, which is really interesting too. So this is the simulation workflow. So you may have noticed every time I made a change, I had to, rewind the sim and then run the frames and see if the result that I had were great. So simulation is great to achieve avoidance. It's great to achieve close physics and that kind of stuff. But you really miss individual control upon the characters here, because the notes that you're gonna get from that crowd may be, oh, I want that character to wear a t-shirt. I want someone here. And please remove me that character, or please make that character turning the head on the left. So all the notes, most of the time, they will be individual character notes. And when you are in the simulation tool, you don't have really access to individuals. You got access to rules that you can provide to a bunch of characters. So you need to also have another workflow which allows you to take those notes rather than going into sim. Because if for some reason you decide to delete that character in simulation, you may influence everybody else. Like if that character is not here, maybe those guys will not avoid each other the same way. So maybe the director really likes all those guys, but just want to get rid of him. Yeah, it's going to be really hard for you to achieve. So it's needed to introduce another workflow there. So let's say I'm happy with this simulation and I want to make a first step out of it. I'll have to export first my simulation. So let me change the name there. Let me export my 300 frames there. So I'm kind of baking out the results, but I'm not baking out geometry. I'm baking out the simulation results, so the bone orientation, position, and scales at every frame for every single character. So it's running the simulation for me, writing a per frame cache. And when it's done, you may notice that now my timeline turned green. And rather than having to rewind and rerun, now I can move freely in time and see what's going on there, which is great. And now that the crowd has been exported, I can actually go into Arnold and throw a rendering, and now I can expect my characters to appear into the rendering stage. So just a quick word about the rendering here. For every major rendering engines that we support, we'll have a dedicated plugin which will create the geometry on the fly. It's not uncommon that you have 100,000 characters, and this is representing a huge amount of data that you don't want to take everything into memory. So when you have a plugin for Arnold or RenderMan or V-Ray or Redshift or whatsoever, what we'll do is we'll just delay geometry of each character one after another, only if it's in the first frame of the camera, only if it's required. And when memory is missing, we're going to unload some of the characters. So they will be, in the image, in the pixel, but they are not into the memory anymore. So it's a really efficient way to handle a large number of characters. So this is why we rely on procedural rendering. And the really nice thing about procedural rendering is that we are not baking out geometry. So if I store that snapshot and maybe, I change my mind, those red sweatshirts, they're really obvious here. And finally, this is a summer shot. I want everybody wearing a t-shirt. So I can just, change my repetition of assets, and I can just re-render that scene. And as soon as you do this, as the geometry is not baked out, everything will be refreshed directly into the viewport. You don't have to go into your scene anymore, re-export that cache or whatsoever. Everything is fully still dynamic and procedural from here. So now you can see my characters which were wearing sweatshirt, now they're wearing all t-shirts. And let's store that snapshot there. Okay, what about the note I was mentioning? I was referring to the fact that maybe you want some characters to be perceived differently or do something different. So now that we are into that green timeline, I can switch into another mode, which is called the layout mode. Let me just clean the scene slightly, remove some of the nodes that we don't need. And in layout mode, now you don't need any knowledge about Golem or whatsoever. You just need knowledge about how you handle objects into Maya. Now you can select a bunch of characters the way you want to, and you can move them and edit them in a really simple manner. So let's move that character here. I can change it, of course, orientation. I can change orientation of multiple characters at the same time. I can use also the scaling tool. The scaling tool will scale the distance between the character. Or if I'm in object mode, it's going to scale the actual size of the character if I want to make it bigger. And now I can really iterate really fast to all the nodes that I've been providing. Okay. And when you're happy with this, oops, save. Once again, just save your scene and render, and all that scene will be updated automatically for you. There you go. So what about what's just happened here with the layout tool? So let me show you what we just did. So what we just did here is we kind of added something we called layers to the scene. And we did it in a really seamlessly way. We selected characters and moved them around, but everything got recorded for you. So for example, we can go back in time and see all the various modifications that you've been doing and reapply them if we want to. So let me walk you through what happened here. First, we selected those two characters and we apply a translation. Then we selected that guy, apply another translation on the side. And that translation, if I want, can be modified. So I can change the transform value and so on. Then we moved that character and rotated it. Then we select those guys and we expanded and rotated them, and so on and so forth. And I mean, if you want to update that graph, for some reasons, those characters here, you want them to be translated, but you also want to take into account that guy. Oh, great. You bring a selector, connect it to translate, and now that guy gets translated with the same value. You want to remove a character from the rendering. Let's say we're not happy with those bunch there. Let's go back into our graph. So, sorry, let's get the selection. Those guys there. I'm gonna select them, and I'm just adding a kill nodes to them, and they're not here anymore. They're not just displayed, but they're still, of course, into the simulation here if we want to change our mind later. We want to maybe populate another part of the simulation here. That's all fine. I can bring maybe a selector. I can put a star, which means that I'm gonna select everybody, and I'm gonna ask that I want to duplicate everybody. So now I've got twice more characters into my scene. And just to make my point, I can show you here all the characters. They are now duplicated, and on the other side, they are wearing the same assets, and they're having the exact same time. So I can maybe switch the time and say, okay, please play 10 frames in the future, and maybe let's reshuffle the assets so they don't look alike. And now you've got twice more characters in a really controllable manner, and still interactive. And of course, as soon as you're going to render, you'll get everything being displayed. Oh yeah, I assigned them with the same type, so this is why they're wearing the blue t-shirts. But you get the idea. Let me show you one last trick that I really like. I was saying earlier that maybe sometimes you want to override the posture of your character. So let's say you're not happy with that guy. Let's select him. And you want to maybe ask an animator to retake that animation for some reasons. You're not happy with the fingers or to the legs, or you want to completely retake that animation because that character is so close to the camera that you want to give him, a really good animation here. So in a casual workflow, crowd workflow, it would mean that you'll have to remove that, first export that character, maybe bake it out as a geometry file format, such as an FBX maybe, or an Alembic or USD. You would have to remove it from the crowd. You will have to import that FBX into Maya, ask an animator to redo the curves, the animation curves. And when it comes to rendering, you will have to import that FBX into your scene, or that Maya scene into your scene and the crowds, and combine the two together. And this is just for one character. Let's say you have to do 10 characters. You can feel that this is a really cumbersome workflow. So instead of doing so, maybe we can just take advantage of the procedural way that Golaem provides. So here I'm bringing a rig node, and I'm going to create a an animation control rig. And I'm not an animator, but now if you give this to an animator, you'll be able to put keyframes everywhere here and completely reanimate that character as he wants while still being into the procedural Golem tool. So yeah, you can just change my animation here. Yeah, well, you can tell I'm not really good with this, but you get a sense. When you got talent and this is your job, I guess this is easier for you to do. And once again, when you're happy with this, you can save, and we can see, you know, before, after. We can even copy that posture to another character if we want to. But we've got full control on top of everything, even, you know, the actual posture of the character. And I'm gonna save it here and do another render. Or yeah, let's do another render. So yeah, once it's saved, you know, you can just check that everything goes well. You can see that the edits that you've been doing in that character now appears and other characters get generated. Just to finalize with this, whenever you're happy with all of this here, you can even make something we call the preset into the library. So we've got a simulation cache library where, let's say you're really happy with this, you want to bring it in. I'm going to create a preset with the library here. And let's say tomorrow I've got a new shot to do, and in that new shot, I need a couple of characters avoiding each other. Yeah, let's say that one here. You know, I can just start by doing my terrain. There we go. And I can go into the library and say, well, let's bring that cache there. Now you'll have your cache, and now we can restart layouting in a different way. You want to move those characters into another position? Well, up to you. You can just relay out that cache and reshape that cache. So this is a workflow we see more and more. People tend to do less simulation and more layout because it provides, you know, more artistic control and more overrides on top of the characters. So they do, you know, a couple of caches of maybe characters talking to each other, characters avoiding each other, characters on the phone, cars, and whenever they need those, rather than launching all the simulation and doing all that setup, they just jump into the library, pick those various items that they want to, and move to the next one. Here, for example, I've got a stadium asset. I mean, you can bring everything into your scene. So here, there's a stadium there, there's my locomotion, and I can move them around. I can really like build my scene like Lego bricks and just change those characters as if they were, you know, my objects. Yeah, I guess that's it for me. Maybe one last thing I want to let you with. I won't build the scene, but I just want to show you other usages. I was mentioning cars, and this is something that we are really looking into right now. So let me just show you how does the car system works for a minute or so. City traffic there. Car just rely on the Maya curves there. So here you may notice that I have a couple of Maya curves that I drew. We can connect Golem roads on it. You can decide on those roads how many lines you want in one direction or another. Into the extra attributes here, I've got, you know, the forward lane count. I can put as many as I want to here. So you can really construct your network the way you like to. You place your entities the same way that I've been placing them before. And in terms of behavior, we've got a couple of traffic behaviors, and this is just some extra behaviors there. And, you know, when you launch the simulation, everything is going to be automatic for you. Like, let's go to a traffic light, for example, that one. Here, there's a traffic light where the characters stop to the green light, and then that one turns from green to red, and then that one turns from red to green, and, you know, every single character will have its own purpose, life, avoidance, respect the traffic rules, and so on and so forth. And that can interact with the pedestrians if you want to. Probably a good time for questions now.
Yes, sir. Time for Q&A. So yeah, thanks, Nicolas, for walking through everything Golem. This is an amazing demo, walkthrough, and presentation. And yes, I am seeing questions coming through both in the chat and the Q&A box, so we'll get started on those. This is a question from Steven. Do you have any tips for creating characters for export to Unreal Engine?
Yeah, well, actually, no extra effort for Unreal Engine. Golem comes with a full ecosystem of other DCC's plugin. So we support, for example, Unreal, but also Katana, Houdini. So that library tool that I just showed you is available. So there's a Golaem plugin for Unreal, and that library tool and that layout tool that I just showed you are available into Unreal. So you can, when you click on this within Unreal, maybe I can load Unreal in the background if let's see if I get a chance if it loads. You have the library, you can click on it and that will create the characters for you automatically. It will create skeletal meshes, so which is the default representation for a character into Unreal, and you can override everything you want to. It will be controlled by the Golem cache. So the exact same simulation will be available into Unreal and you can render it. Some of the customers making previews such as FrameStore or making cinematics such as Waterproof. They're using the Unreal plugin on the daily basis to actually render the crowds. So if it loads in the background while we are answering those questions, I'll show you how the simulation we just did can load into it.
Perfect, thank you. And I don't know if you do this at the same time as well too, but can you please elaborate more on collision or avoidance of geometry? Background geometry, sorry. I realize there's a
yeah, sure. So let's see if I can quickly new level basic. And so when you load the Golem plugin, as I said, you end up with the library tool. Let's see. And oh, that's the wrong file being loaded. And sorry about this. Let me load my library file. So here, here's the cache we just did. So as I said, the layout editor is also available, and yeah, that's it. Here you go. You got your exact same simulation here into Unreal. And you can use the sequencer and everything that you want to, and you got all the characters running the same. So that's easy as this, all the characters entering the zone, making their animation. Here you go. Yeah, so a quick word about collisions. So I guess this is collisions for humans. Let me jump back into the scene. So we have the information about the terrain. When we started making that scene here, we computed the terrain info there. And that terrain info here contains the borders of what the characters will know about. So they are connected to the terrain at any time. And we are doing some kind of recasting and that kind of stuff to understand where are going to be the borders here for my characters. So let's say, oops, for some reason my character I'm not selectable anymore. Come on. It's probably, yeah, okay. Okay, never mind. Let's see if I can extend that tool here and get a character in. Yeah, okay, that's because I'm not in simulation. Let's go back into sim and run the simulation again if I can get it. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so now I'm back into simulation, so I can get a sense of what's going on probably. Okay, so as I said, those characters, they can see the others. So we are perceiving, you can imagine there's a cylinder around that character and it can like perceive who's there. And you can perceive that trajectory, can interrogate, ask, query the trajectory of every single character. So this is for the characters, and we also see the environment. So here we'll see that we're recasting from a distance where are the walls, and you can see that the further the characters move to that box, the more you see the borders. So the way it happens is we kind of implemented some papers, some SIGGRAPH papers about crowd avoidance for characters. And the way it works is we're going to look into 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, where we can be if we keep the same orientation and the same speed. And we're going to do the same thing for every single character around us that we perceive. If at some point we figure that there's a collision, which may happen, we'll follow some rules. And the rules are going to be either move left, move right, slow down, or speed up. And the weight for those rules are defined into the navigation, which is the behavior in charge of the avoidance. And into the advanced attribute, we'll be able to specify what's the penalty for accelerating, what's the penalty for speeding down, turning left, turning right. For example, if you're in France or in Europe, well, everywhere except in UK and Japan, which are countries where you drive on the left side, you will tend to avoid on the right side of people. If you face someone, you'll you will tend to step right because your whole life you've been driving on the right side, except if you're, of course, in the UK, Australia, and all those countries. And this is what we've been defining here. There's a higher penalty to turn left, to avoid from the left side, than turning on the right side. So we're going to take a decision based on that weight. But of course, I mean, if we have no choice and we are already on the left side of the character, even if there's a penalty, it's not high enough for the characters to decide to move right. So there's the balance here, and that balance will be taken into account every time there's a collision. So we're going to detect collisions and react to this based on those and apply some rules there. Hope that makes sense. Else there's some documentation about the papers that we implemented and which give more scientific details about it.
Perfect. Is there anything else more you wanted to cover on that question, Nicolas? Sorry, I don't know if
No, it's I think except if the person who's been asking has want more details, that's kind of the overview here. And I may probably finish with just this. Of course, this is for human avoidance, but let's say you do horse avoidance, probably you want to do something different. So we also allow you to do your own avoidance system if you want to. In all the scenes that we provide, it comes, so we provide, tons of scenes to get started with or to experiment with. One scene was from one of the customers that was working on Game of Thrones, and they of course had, their own way they wanted to have their own way for characters to avoid each other. So here we're gonna have soldiers and horses in the background, and this is the exact same principle. The character will have, they're gonna perceive other things in the scene. So here we can see what they perceive, and depending on what they perceive, you can follow some rules. So here they wanted the characters to line up really in the distance, the horses to line up really in the distance, and slow down depending on this. So this is also something that you can do if you want to. You can design your own avoidance behavior. So we have another level of complexity in Golem, which allows you to override some tools and design your own stuff if you want to, if you're not happy with the default behaviors.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'm also seeing a few questions come through in the chat as well about Golem's availability with Autodesk. Do you want to elaborate more about how people can access it, or I can take that question as well too if you want?
Yeah, I think feel free to complete me if I missed something. So let me start with the fact that Golem is available from Maya 22 to Maya 26. It's important for us to we know that studios, they can be still running the older versions of Maya. So we made the effort to support until Maya 22 and all the intermediate versions. And as I said, we've got all that ecosystem, which is available around the Maya plugins. So we've got plugins for Arnold and the major rendering engine. We've got plugins for Unreal and other DCCs as well, which allows you to render or bring your characters into Houdini for effects integration. We obviously have USD support if you want to bring this into Solaris or into a USD pipeline. And finally, in terms of licensing, Golem is available through something called the Media Entertainment Collection, which also includes Maya, Max, 5 seats of Arnold, couple of seats of Bifrost, Motion Builder, and Golem is part of all that package. Also, only simulation from Golem requires a license. So the Houdini plugin or the Unreal plugin or the rendering plugins, they are not licensed. You can deploy them on as many computers as you want to. And it's just when you run a sim, when you press that enter button and the simulation is running, such as the one that we have here, that's going to require your collection license. Did I miss anything, Lucas?
That was a great explanation. And okay, also for the Bifrost part, I know it was 15 actually. It's 15 for Bifrost.
Thank you.
Cool. This is also a question from Hernan that it's on the chat. So yeah, actually, this is a Bifrost question. Quick example, let's say I have a crowd of characters going through an environment and I have some explosion using Bifrost. How can I make the character being affected by this sim, for example, or any kind of simulation? I think it's kind of maybe a bit covered by the collision stuff you were talking about before, but if you want to elaborate more on the...
Yeah, I can elaborate more. So here, the collision system is more Golem to Golem entities and the entities that we know about, such as the obstacles that we've been computed. So anything that you bring, which is like computed from another system, has to be at some point be integrated into the Golem system. So I guess Bifrost at some point generates maybe some geometry, or you can have some locators being connected, or maybe you can create a volume, a Maya geometry out of the Bifrost simulation, even if it's just temporary. But we need to have at some point a locator, a 3D position, or a geometry to react to, and we can compute collisions to it. If it's a full Bifrost object, we may not know about it, but if that Bifrost object is connected to a Maya object, we can detect. The same way that, you know, I've been adding a trigger, which was allowing me to do something specific. You can, you know, check for a specific position for an object, a distance to an object, and even a collision. We've got something called the collision trigger, and the collision trigger allows you to check if a part of your body is colliding with a specific object that you've been providing. And of course, sometimes maybe you may just step your feet on one of those objects, and this is not a good enough reason for that character to, I don't know, explode, fall, die, take another motion. So you can also compute how strong is that collision and on which part of your body is that collision. So you can say, okay, if it's on my chest or in my head, which are the critical parts, and it's more that, and the kinetic value, so which is the strongness of the collision, is superior to some value, I want to detect it, take it into account, and maybe play some physics. We've got a physics engine, which allows you to do some ragdoll plus animation simulation. Like, you know, in Game of Thrones, every time their White Walker is being eaten by dragons and so on, this is the physics engine taking advantage of this. So you can trigger those behaviors based on those collisions, and they will react to the collision as soon as the trigger enable that motion, enable that behavior. So yeah, it will be all through the triggers and making sure that this is connected to a Maya object. It can be just a locator. It doesn't have to be, you know, real geometry, but it has to be a Maya object that we can understand.
Perfect. Thank you for that run through. Unfortunately, we are at the end of our time. Nicolas, do you mind sharing actually that end of the last slide with the QR codes?
Sure, of course.
Perfect. So on these QR codes, everybody, you can scan one for the Golem Quick Start Guide on Autodesk Help. A lot of really great learning and get started videos, so you guys can dive into Golem right away. As well, if you have any further questions too that we weren't able to get to, I also put a QR code for the new Autodesk Golem community. So you can put in the forum any questions you might have about using the software, maybe any support questions, things like that for you guys. So I just wanted to say a big thank you, one, to Nicolas for taking the time to talk about everything for Golem, but also especially to everyone here joining. Thank you all for being here, and we hope you're able to learn a bit more about Golem today. And as I mentioned at the beginning as well, the recording will be sent to your email and posted on our M&E YouTube channel afterwards. So you guys will have all this recording all ready to go for you to rewatch if you ever need to. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. I will catch you at the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.